believe that their gods, Osiris in particular, came from Orion, and that upon his resurrection from the earth, Osiris returned to Orion.
我操，鸡掰！3.5个L大油咩
？Is that Jesus himself is somehow from the constellation Orion, and that is ultimately where we, as a human species, we have this very powerful connection between the resurrection of Osiris going to Orion and Christ ultimately returning from Orion. We look at Christ holding this crystalline orb is trying to tell us that there's a higher intelligence that operates in our world. He tapped into it. He's saying there's a cosmic intelligence interwoven in human history.
Is it possible that Leonardo da Vinci was in possession of extraterrestrial knowledge? Ancient astronaut theorists believe the answers can be found by examining the artist's final and perhaps most prophetic work of art, one which many believe hides a startling portrait. Amboise, France, 1513. At Chateau de Courroucée, a 61-year-old Leonardo da Vinci begins work on what will be his final painting. 3 years later, he completes his portrait of an androgynous figure emerging from a shadowy background, St. John the Baptist.
Picture this painting in a dimly lit chapel. Before lighting the candle, you don't see anything. You light the candle, and the light of the flame illuminates the painting, and there emerges against the dark background St. John the Baptist. From the light to another, he's pointing to another realm. Oh yes, this is where the divine wisdom comes from. This is the source of everything. The first words of St. John are, "I saw the light, I will come to this earth."
Leonardo was encoding extraordinary secrets in his paintings. He wanted to imbue his work for the future generations with his own private message. His paintings are like portals to another world where the real Leonardo inhabits. But whether we're big enough to accept what he has to say is quite another matter.
I think he had some very subtle messages he wanted to convey to not the people of that time, but to the people of our time. And we have to look for it. Is he talking about extraterrestrials? Is he talking about the future? Investigators have recently found some pretty astonishing things about Leonardo da Vinci's painting, John the Baptist. And they mirror the image to create a double image. And then through an enhancement process, they're able to bring out what seems to be the face of an extraterrestrial. It's a pretty unusual thing, and we know that Da Vinci did use this mirroring technique. And so this isn't something that is so far-fetched that he would do.
Da Vinci is one of a long line of artists who have told us, beginning with the ancient Egyptians and running through the early Christians and Tibetans, that art is a medium, it's a conduit through which ordinary people can connect with higher dimensional beings, even extraterrestrials. I think this is the ultimate message that Leonardo placed in the codes and the symbols within his paintings.
Did Leonardo da Vinci experience an extraterrestrial encounter? One that opened his mind to what was once considered forbidden knowledge? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and believe that Da Vinci encoded his works in such a way that future generations could learn the truth about mankind's origins. And that, when fully understood, will lead the way to our ultimate destiny.
thought we did. Doesn't mean that there isn't one.
I believe that these protocols are already established, and in fact, we are already in contact with extraterrestrials.
What we actually could be looking at here is a genuine alien life form.
The question I have is, what are we going to do?
October 19th, 2017, the Hawaiian island of Maui. Here, perched atop a 10,000-foot summit, stands the Haleakala Observatory. Astronomers using the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System, or PANSTARRS, detect a mysterious object traveling at high speed through our solar system. The trajectory of this object is unlike any that has ever been seen before.
I was in charge of coordinating the observing to characterize the object. The object was discovered, and at that point there were images taken that showed an object moving rapidly with respect to the stars. The stars are individual dots of light, and this object was a streak, so they knew it was moving fast. At that point, they started to compute an orbit to try and understand what this object was. This was a really dramatic difference from what had been seen previously.
The object was found to have a highly unusual hyperbolic orbit, suggesting that it was traveling at such a high rate of speed that it was not being pulled into a more circular orbit by the force of gravity.
Everything in the solar system is either on a circular or an elliptical orbit. And this was a particularly exciting observation because we had never seen anything like this come through the solar system.
The object, which was classified as an asteroid and named Oumuamua, a Hawaiian word meaning scout or messenger, is the first object of its kind to be officially recognized as interstellar.
An asteroid was discovered coming into our solar system. Let that sink in. An asteroid was discovered coming into our solar system. From where? We don't know. We just need to go outside our solar system. Meaning it's from a different star system somewhere else. That's the story that we've actually seen it. We now know objects can travel from one star system to another.
Researchers engaged in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI, were intrigued not only by Oumuamua's origins, but also by its unusual shape.
It had a very funny shape. It's shaped like a cigar. You know, it's maybe 5 or 10 times as long as it is across. No asteroid that we know of looks like a cigar. Inevitably, there were people who said, well, are you sure it's a rock? Maybe there's somebody inside this thing. Maybe they've come to visit. Now, if I were going to build a spaceship that was going to take hundreds of years, or maybe thousands or millions of years to go from one star to another, I would start by finding a big asteroid that I like, that had all the minerals on it, and I would use that and just turn it into the ship I want.
Mainstream astronomers such as Avi Loeb, the chair of Harvard University's astronomy department, noted that the cigar shape of Oumuamua is the optimal design for a vessel to travel through space. This has led ancient astronaut theorists and even some astronomers to question if the so-called asteroid is actually an extraterrestrial vessel.
What I think is interesting is that Oumuamua is cigar-shaped because there are stories and eyewitness reports of cigar-shaped UFOs. So, is it possible that there is some type of connection?
Reports of strange cigar-shaped UFOs date back hundreds of years. This famous woodcut from 1561, for example, is based on a first-hand account by someone who claimed that a number of round and tubular objects could be seen battling in the sky over the town of Nuremberg, Germany. looks like a long cylindrical craft hovering over Mount Washington, New Hampshire in 1870. And in modern times, sightings of cigar-shaped UFOs are commonly reported, as are those which are described as so-called flying saucers.
It is possible that an asteroid has been taken, hollowed out, made into a spaceship, and then put into a special orbit or trajectory. And what might be inside of Oumuamua is anyone's guess. Discoveries like Oumuamua certainly have swayed the scientific community towards our ideas, because for the first time in my life have I heard an astronomer say that this object that is floating through our solar system right now may be an extraterrestrial craft. That doesn't come from me, it comes from an astronomer. Maybe Oumuamua was a false alarm, but maybe it was the real thing. However, it does inform us that we need a protocol. We need steps in place that will help us to determine what we are actually seeing and what the response should be. This was a tremendous wake-up call because it started to give us a sense of how would we respond if there were such an intrusion, if you will.
Does humanity have a plan for what to do in the event that a spacecraft carrying extraterrestrial beings comes to our planet? And if so, what are the protocols? And who is responsible for implementing them?
The International Academy of Astronautics set up something called the Post-Detection Task Group, and I chaired that for some years. And it was just an informal collection of people whose job was to simply deliberate on if there should be some sort of putative signal of detection of alien technology. What next? What do we do? Who do we tell? How do we respond? What would the impact be on society?
In 1989, the International Academy of Astronautics, working with SETI, published the Declaration of Principles Concerning Activities Following the Detection of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It stated that if proof of an alien presence is confirmed, the next consideration should be to decide which government or scientific entity should begin communication so that the situation does not quickly turn into an international free-for-all.
The SETI protocols, however, are only binding on the astronomical community. There are many more players in the equation. The SETI protocols may cover astronomers, but they don't cover governments, and they're not even legally binding.
Nobody can tell a radio astronomer or anybody else that they're not allowed to transmit. And even if the United States and other major nations decided that there should be some sort of moratorium on using radio telescopes for that purpose, it's nothing to prevent North Korea, for example, from doing it. I think it's totally unpoliceable, which is why we have to think through rather carefully what the consequences would be in the event that there was this exciting discovery.
Considering the enormous global impact of any first communication or contact between someone from Earth and an intelligent being from another planet, wouldn't world governments already have their own protocols in place to handle such a situation? Protocols that would govern not just individual countries, but everyone in the world.
I spent the better part of about 4 years researching a book that myself and some colleagues were working on to create a protocol. If we were invaded by aliens, what would we do? And we searched everywhere we could, and we had several databases available to us, and we've never found an official sanctioned government document that says if we're invaded by aliens, this is what we do. Doesn't mean that there isn't one.
With my experience of the British Ministry of Defence, I'd be surprised if there wasn't a protocol for this. So I suspect that somewhere deep in the bowels of the Ministry of Defence and the Department of Defence, there is a plan. But I also suspect that it's highly classified.
But while Many of the world's top governments continue to deny the existence of any plans or protocols that would be used in the event of an extraterrestrial encounter. Many ancient astronaut theorists believe that not only do such plans exist, but that they've been in place for decades, and that contact between Earth governments and extraterrestrial visitors has been happening in secret for thousands of years. December 2017. The New York Times publishes a bombshell story. It reveals the existence of a $22 million black budget program within the Pentagon, created to investigate whether unidentified flying objects pose a threat to national security. From 2007 until 2012, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program collected a compilation of videos that show inexplicable aerial phenomena, some of which have been released to the public.
One of these videos, at least, comes from the gun camera of an F-18. And you don't just jump out in your plane and fly out and chase something because you saw it go by. You were told to do so, and it took a lot of people to know this was going on.
Although the complete findings of the program, otherwise known as ATIP, are still considered highly classified and may never be released, its very existence provides proof that the United States military had protocols in place for how to investigate unidentified flying objects. But do the videos imply something else? Something of even greater significance? Could they be evidence not only that UFOs exist, but that the government has been studying them and not shooting them down for a reason?
We simulate all sorts of scenarios in wargaming simulations. I've seen these simulations where they can teleport their soldiers from one place to another instantaneously, or they have shields that keep anything below extremely high caliber weapons from penetrating their armor. A lot of times this is called an engagement for 2075. Now think about that. We can prepare and plan for engagements against forces in the future. That's almost like preparing for a force that's just that much more advanced than us.
Is it possible that by gathering and then studying evidence of UFO activity, the U.S. military is developing protocols which will prepare future soldiers to face what could be extraterrestrial forces, and if not here on Earth, on other planets?
We've got to have space capabilities. We've got to be able to run out into our vehicle, turn it on, and fly up into space. Right now, it takes months to prepare to go into space. We need to have bases on the moon and on Mars and Europa and various other places in the solar system so that we don't have to play on one staging ground, Earth. We can't fight wearing a spacesuit. We're going to have some other type of environment capability, like powered armor, suits like in Iron Man, that improves your abilities instead of hinders them. So we need some other technology for that.
But if the United States military has secret protocols for how to identify and combat extraterrestrial threats, could they also have protocols for more peaceful encounters? And if so, could these protocols also be part of a global strategy, one secretly shared with other nations around the world? Vatican City, May 2014. In a sermon dedicated to concepts of inclusion, Pope Francis shocks his congregation when he declares that if alien life forms ever arrive on Earth, he would welcome them into the Catholic Church. The pontiff's remarks stun the world, as it is the first time that a sitting pope acknowledges not only that extraterrestrial life exists, but that it could be intelligent and capable of interplanetary travel.
The Pope's action is one little example of the broad shift in attitudes toward the possibility of visitation.
Religious authorities around the world, leaders of the world religions, are having to deal with the possibility possibility, if not the already known reality, of the existence of extraterrestrial beings.
Whether a secretly held belief or a recently evolved position, faith-based organizations around the globe have recently embraced a more open and transparent view that intelligent life beyond Earth is possible.
The Catholic Church's statements are allied with the statements of the Dalai Lama, who has recently been talking about openness and oneness and the sameness of all the creatures in creation, that we shouldn't treat extraterrestrial beings as strangers, but rather as similar to us. When they will encounter us, or we will encounter them, it does not have to be conflict if we do not allow it to be so.
As far as ancient astronaut theorists are concerned, the willingness of world religions to embrace the notion of visitations by extraterrestrial beings is not new, but dates back hundreds, if not thousands of years. They argue that most religions, if not all, are based on the idea that not only do otherworldly beings exist, but that their purpose in coming to Earth has been to provide everything